My name is Hannah Jane Pritchett, current U of A GIST Master's student. Welcome to the University of Arizona GIST podcast. Our hosts are Chris Lukenbiel with special co-host Shea Lemar. Our topic today is GIS Leadership, with guests Steve Whitney, Mark Christiano, Jenna Leveille, and Jean Trobia. Let's get started.
So hi, my name is Chris Lukenbiel. I'm the director at U of A's GIST programs. And for our podcast this week, I'm very excited to say it's co-hosted with Arizona State University's Shea Lemar, the amazing Mrs. Lemar, who both works with the MAS GIS program and also the School of Geography and Urban Planning. And I know I might have got that wrong, so she can correct me. And the topic this week is GIS leadership in the state of Arizona, and we're delighted to have some wonderful leaders and people that have been working in the state of Arizona for quite a long time to share some of their wisdom and to do a little bit of crosstalk.
Great. So I will introduce our guest today. As Chris said, I'm the Director of Geospatial Research and Solutions at ASU and adjunct faculty in their one-year MAS GIS program that's out of ASU School for Geographical Sciences and Urban Planning. So close, Chris. I'm incredibly impressed. I'd like to introduce Jenna Leveille, who is the Arizona Deputy State Cartographer. She works at the Arizona State Land Department, helps lead the Arizona Geographic Information Council, and is a board member to the National State Geographic Information Council. Hello, Jenna.
Good morning.
I'd like to introduce Steve Whitney, who's the GIS manager at Pima County, is the chair of the Arizona Geographical Information Council, is the AGIC Conference Committee co-chair, and the APLS Geospatial Committee chair. And Steve, will you say hello and remind me what APLS stands for?
Sure. Good morning. APLS is the Arizona Professional Land Surveyors Group. That's the professional organization for one of the professional organizations in the state for land surveyors.
Wonderful. Next, we have Mark Christiano. He's the CAIBAB National Forest GIS coordinator and a champion of statewide Lidar efforts in Arizona. He's also the co-chair for the Arizona Geographic Information Council Lidar Work Group, and has been critical in helping to coordinate both technical value and funding for that group and for Lidar in the state. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, everybody.
And also, I'd like to introduce Jean Trobia, who was the Arizona State Cartographer for 19 years. He is a past president of the Arizona Geographic Information Council, as well as the National States Geographic Information Council, is a senior researcher at ASU, and is very active in Arizona and the National GIS coordination and data development activities. Good morning, Jean.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Chris, why don't I pass it back to you?
So as you can see, we have a wonderful group of people that have been working in the geospatial industry in Arizona and nationally. And it's very exciting for us to have you all here today. And I'm gonna start by asking Jean a question, being the person that's, for me, when I came into the GIS community in Arizona, was one of the first people that I met and was inspired by your leadership, Jean, and your contributions. And it's kind of a hard question to ask, but I think it's more like something that you develop over time. And maybe you can help us try to tease out this idea, but what sort of propelled you to become a GIS leader for the state of Arizona? Was it thrust upon you? Was it something that you developed into? Or is it something that just happens? What was your experience?
That's a good question, and it really makes me think. So let me say that when I first got into GIS was quite some time ago, and there weren't a lot of GIS professionals around. At the time, I was a landscape architect, and I was doing environmental studies and power line corridor studies for placing corridors. and I was using a lot of paper products to do the analysis and Lotus 123 spreadsheets. And I happened to run into a couple of people that were starting to use GIS, and they introduced me at the time to the just recently started ALRIS program at State Lands, which is the Arizona Land Resource Information System. So I did an internship there. I was the first intern at State Lands, and that leveraged me into a position at Utah. I'll try to make this shorter, but the thing is that there weren't very many people around doing this. And part of my job at Utah was training people. And Pima County passed a bond to start a GIS, and I was from Tucson to begin with. And I got contacted by the people in Tucson and was offered the GIS manager position for the Pima County GIS program. I got to say that I had a lot of hesitancy about it because I didn't think I had that much experience, but I ended up taking it, and it went from an office of 1 to an office of 25 by the time I left. I got to say, I got thrust into it and probably kicking and screaming in some ways. But what I learned was if you surround yourself with really talented people that have a lot of different experience, that really helps, and just try to help guide them to be successful at the things that we want to achieve.
Great. And I'd like to say, so I've known everyone in this meeting for decades, actually. So except Mark, it's only been about a decade for you. So, you know, the newbie. So the new guy did the stage. But I have met, over my many years in the professional world, I have met plenty of people who are sure from the moment I meet them, no matter what their experience, they are sure that they are leaders and they should be leading in their field. They're sure they're experts. They're just very sure of themselves, and some of them are very talented, and to be honest, some of them aren't. I'd like to just say everyone in this group, they are some of the best leaders that I have seen in GIS, as well as just good people you can depend on. And none of them have that trait of, everyone follow me, I'm the leader. They're very, I have a passion about what I'm doing. I want to make this a better place to work in and to be in. And those tend to be the leaders that I've noticed more people follow. So those of you new to this discussion, if you've also met those people who are just sure right out the gate that they're born leaders and you should be following them, these guys are smart and they're proud of what they do, but they lead because they do good things and other people choose to follow them and they are knowledgeable in their field, not just because they push their way to the front. So I think a lot of them would say what Jean had said, which was, I was doing my job, I was doing it well, I was doing something I loved, and I started gathering people near, or we started gathering people with similar interests, and we've grown from there. So on that note, let's just jump to Steve to start. What qualities, again, you're all very humble people, but we've specifically asked you here to discuss leadership. So what qualities have helped you to become and sustain being a successful leader in the field of GIS particularly? Steve, can we start with you?
Yeah, for me, I think it starts with the desire to network and collaborate and share with other people, and just a love of GIS and working with GIS people, a love of the technology, a love of what it can do and how it can improve things going forward. I think, for me, some of the qualities, is just not being afraid to get involved, having a proactive attitude and, creative thinking and surrounding yourself with creative thinkers and the desire to keep improving things. Don't just let things stagnate. There's always ways to keep improving. I think, some of the other things that have helped me is having great mentors such as Gene at Pima County over the many years we worked here, and then getting involved in user groups locally, going up to more regional things like AGIC, and then even up to NISGIC, just meeting other people and networking with other people and other leaders and learning from their experiences and sharing experiences together. And it's just that part of, community, building a really community feel that helps you become a better leader and helps you be comfortable being a leader as well. And, I've always been interested in, why am I always chosen to be a leader? Why me all the time? So in all the management and leadership training that the county has put us through over the years, I've always kind of keyed in on, what is it that makes people become a leader? Is it partly does it start with their family environment, their upbringing? How does education play into that? How do their experiences on the job and the people that they work with play into that? I think it's a combination of everything. And, for me, going forward and sustaining being a leader, it's really, going back to what Gene said, surround yourself with people in that similar situation, and just, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and collaborate and learn and share. And I think those are all the things that have helped me in my pathways to becoming a leader.
Great. Mark, did you agree with some of those? Do you have different ideas on what traits you've found valuable or you've seen to be valuable?
Yeah. It's interesting. As I was sitting there listening to Steve, I have a lot of the same thoughts, but at the same time, being a leader in our world is there's two hats to that, right? There's being a leader of other GIS people, but then in my role as a GIS coordinator for National Forest, I'm the only one doing GIS. Therefore, I have to be a geospatial leader for people who may not be interested in me being a leader. And I was sitting here thinking about a mentor of mine who was a superintendent in the National Park Service, who said there's two types of power in the world when it comes to this kind of stuff. There's positional power and personal power. Positional power is like the military. I am your captain, you are a private, you will do what I say. And then there's personal power, which is follow me because you trust me. And I think a lot about that when trying to be a leader, because in the Kaibab, I have no power. I cannot order anybody to do anything. If they want to make their map look terrible, I cannot stop them. So being a leader in the U.S. Forest Service, you have to sit there and think, okay, how can I get you to trust me, to realize that what I'm telling you will help you and get you to go in my direction? And so a lot of what Steve talked about, I definitely think about in trying to get people to follow you. And I think trust ultimately comes down to it. How do you build that trust? Personally, I like to use humor. I like to send out webcomics and things like that and get people relaxed. And then you can talk to them about geeky GIS stuff that they may or may not want to talk about. So you're talking about sometimes people that are sitting there in muddy boots who've just spent the last 3 days out in the woods, and you're pestering them about a map. And so how do you get them to follow you? And so developing that personal power and understanding how you can reach people so that they can trust you and follow you is a big part of what I think about in leadership. So. Great.
Jenna, I was wondering if you could speak to the traits as well. And in addition, I've noticed GIS is a scientific field, science and math background often utilized. And since I was younger, I've been hearing about it's hard to be a woman in the science and technical fields a lot of times. But I also have to say that within AGIC, within NISGIC, I've seen a lot of the leadership being females, and males and females doing great jobs. So in addition to general traits, are there any, have you noticed any challenges? I believe you're on the board for NISGIC as well as deputy cartographer, state cartographer in Arizona. So anything especially associated with being a female in leadership positions?
It's a good question. I think I would start by echoing what Steve and Mark have shared. You know, it's interesting because Mark got to a big piece of what I experienced with AGIC. I have absolutely no power in Arizona, nothing. You know, AGIC is a volunteer organization, and in order for us to accomplish anything, people have to decide on their own that they want to commit and participate and be involved. And my job is to make that look like something they want to do, you know, that they want to come and play with us. So it's a lot about cultivating culture, right? Where you want to spend your time and how is that valuable to you? So I try to encourage where people are already passionate and get them to contribute where they already have a love and a dedication in their personal life or in their professional life. What are they good at? Mark is a really good example. He is incredibly passionate about Lidar. And I knew about enough about Lidar to be dangerous and to sound like I might know something, but I had no clue when I met him. And now we have a huge group that meets quarterly for AGIC, and we have really made a huge impact on getting Lidar for Arizona. And I feel like I actually know something about Lidar now, thanks to Mark, which is awesome. So I think some of it is just culture, right? And following what you love. So I work really hard on creating trust and culture for Arizona. As far as being a woman in a pretty male-dominated environment, this is funny, I don't know if I'm a good person to talk about. I have never had a challenge of being a woman in my industry. I've been really fortunate, and I recognize that. I have listened to other women, and I'm part of like the Women in GIS group in Arizona, and I've heard a lot of stories of challenge, of feeling like they can't move up, feeling like they're not heard, feeling like they're not as valued as men in our industry. And I have to be honest, Shea, I've never felt that way. I've always felt supported. I've always felt like I was part of the team. And maybe that's just, you know, happenstance and good circumstance. I've had people like Jean and people like Steve that have been around me to just encourage me. And it wasn't about gender, never was. So I think Arizona is pretty fortunate. We have a pretty level ground. And we have a lot of women involved. But I know that's not the case everywhere. So I wish I had better words of wisdom for women struggling, but I've been really fortunate.
So we've been hitting upon some themes related to leadership, and some of us have pointed out that they are not innate. You're not born with them, but you can develop them. And I thought maybe really briefly, rather than rehash some of the ones that we've done, we do the Brady Bunch grid rounds and say, give me a quality of leadership that you think is important. I'll start with Jean, lower right grid corner for me.
Thank you. I think a quality, you touched on it, and it's hard to just have one quality to me. but passion. A long time ago, Jack Dangerman told me that if you're going to teach people with limited resources about GIS, pick people who really want to make the world a better place and aren't afraid to use technology to do it. So working with the right kind of people, in quotes, whatever that is, trust, and learning from your mistakes and trying to improve going forward, and really listening to other people.
How about Steve?
I think a big part is having fun. Make it enjoyable. Have a good attitude. Instill in others that there's more than one right answer. Again, learn. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's the best way to learn going forward. Just enjoy what you do. If you have a passion for it, enjoy it and have fun with it, and make it fun for others around you too.
Jenna?
Well, they covered all of it, right? I'd say integrity and patience. I think owning your own environment, right? Your own behaviors, being willing to say, yeah, I did that and maybe it was wrong. Maybe that wasn't the best choice, but being honest about it and doing your best with that. I think you have to stay true to yourself and encourage others to be honest and to be genuine. So I would agree with both Steve and Jean and add that.
And of course, you just showed another leadership quality by being extremely modest. How about Mark? Do you have a couple more suggestions? I know we're making it harder as we move on.
That's okay. I don't think mine was said. So in looking at these questions today, I was thinking about my best boss and my worst boss and trying to figure out what the difference was between them. And what I came to was communication. And my best boss, it didn't matter what email you wrote, you always got a response. Even if it was just, hey, thanks, or, no problem with that, or he always communicated with us. My worst boss liked to scream and yell and pound his fist on the table and try to scare you. And to me, those are two very different ways of communicating. And so I know for me, when I think about my employee or the group that I'm leading, communicating and making sure that the people who are following you feel valued and like that you are listening to them is critical to being a leader, is listening to your people and making them feel validated, even if what they're saying is like silly. You're like, oh, wow, that's a terrible idea. You still listen and you still give them that time. And I never realized how important that was until I had someone in my life, someone I worked for that really was spectacular at listening to us. And this is someone who was incredibly busy, but he always made you feel like at that moment you were the only person in his life and he was listening to you and what you had to say. And I just think communication is just critical to leadership. So,
and I'm also going to ask my co-host Shea Lemar the same question, because she's a wonderful leader and has been dedicated to promoting GIS and community development at ASU. Shea, what do you have for some ideas about what makes a good leader?
Thanks. I think everyone else hit on some of the biggest keys. And one other one that I could think of is security. Letting the people know that whether they work for you or they're working on a committee with you or whatever it is, you're going to cover their back. So they have the freedom to be creative. They have the freedom to be flexible, try something new, tell you honestly when there's a problem, whatever it is. They feel comfortable doing that because they know you will take care of them. Now, that doesn't mean, like Mark said, that you can't communicate one-on-one and say, hey, I'm glad you took that moment, but wow, maybe we shouldn't do that again in the future. I mean, you're truthful and you're honest, but you keep them safe. You stand up for them to your bosses. You don't throw them under the bus. You take responsibility when it's required, and you share or pass the kudos when they're expected as well. So, Chris, did you have anything to add before I go on? Because you've been doing leadership in Arizona, especially education, for decades.
I've only been around a couple years. I'm a lot younger than I look.
That's what I meant.
I love the comments. I also think of, and I think a comment that Mark made about power, and I always think about, and I think maybe Jean told me this once, that the best way to get results, and if there's something that you want to do, is to make, is to have other people's, to channel your ideas through other people, as well as to empower people, to show them that they can make change within organizations and society. That you're going to have some good ideas as a leader, but to listen and to take somebody's good idea within your group and show them that it can be put to use, to put to value. It can do something. And once you show somebody that they can affect change, they're hooked. They'll become part of the group, they'll become part of the community, and part of society. So for me as an educator, I like to say, both my journey at 3 universities, the biggest success I have is when I can get a student a job and see them make change in their community and to be successful in their life. There's no better satisfaction for me than to see that. So I always feel that power cannot be harnessed. It's something that flows, and you have to allow it to develop naturally. And the problem becomes when you think it's all mine, I'm going to have it, and then that becomes a bottleneck, and so you get stuck. So yeah, it's a great topic.
And on that point, Chris, something you mentioned really meshes well in with that you mentioned just now. I heard multiple people say when we discussed what propels you toward becoming a leader, and people getting involved. They said getting involved in people in your area, and Chris, I think this is especially important for students who are newer to the field of GIS. So there are a lot of great GIS groups within Arizona, and it's how you meet people who have similar passions as you do and similar interests. So maybe we could start with Jenna. Can you mention some community groups that you know of and ways that people could get involved, whether it's local, state, whatever level?
Sure. I guess I want to stress that with volunteer organizations, we will take anyone. We absolutely will. So, and we want people to be involved. So AGIC is the primary forum of geospatial coordination and discussion in Arizona. So for that group to be involved, and I absolutely encourage students and GIS professionals in the state to be involved. Really all it takes is to show up and contribute. So we want that. Some of the other groups in Arizona, there's some more social-based groups. So Phoenix Geo, Tucson has a co-op for GIS. They put on fabulous presentations at least once a month, highlighting the work of the region. Phoenix Geo does the same thing. I believe most of those groups have transitioned to virtual platforms in our current times, and we'll probably go back to in-person at some point. Women in GIS is a new group. It's been established in the last 6 months or so, but it certainly is not just for women. It focuses more on inequity in our profession and how we can develop skills, professional skills. So that applies beyond women. I think another piece of that that's important to note is that we all need champions, right? And men can champion for us, and they do often. So I think it's important to include them in this in the conversation. I think those are the top 4 that come to my mind. I'm sure there are others. There's a Northern GIS user group, but those are the primary ones.
Wonderful. And they don't just have to be, I asked Jenna specifically about user type groups, but there are other ways to get involved and learn. Steve, do you have any thoughts on particular ways to get involved in the community, whether it's through an existing group and or the types of things you can expect when if you attend any of these events?
Yeah, so I always advise people to start small, even within your organization or within your university. Where even in our group in Pima County, we don't keep up with what everybody else is doing. So we have regular meetings where we share with the rest of our team what we're doing. And that translates to university level too. Within the universities, there's GIS groups, even down to the departmental level. So start small, grow from there. As we mentioned, there's local user groups throughout the state. The Tucson Area GIS Cooperative, being one of those, and then there's always AGIC. So there's lots of opportunities out there that you can take advantage of. Yes, you can risk getting oversaturated with your involvement, but and that's why I go back to telling people start small and then just keep growing as your comfort level grows and as you get more involved, and don't be afraid to get involved and volunteer to lead some efforts, which will help you become a leader as well. And then there's other organizations that you can volunteer for, and I, when I talk to students at the university level and they're looking for project ideas or other ways to get involved, that's where the creative part comes in. Think of areas, organizations around your locality that you can volunteer for, or you can go and say, hey, have you thought about using GIS for this? I'd love to be able to show you how GIS might be able to help you solve some of the problems you're facing, or give you insight to more information about what you're working on. So it goes back to that creativity. If you're finding yourself at roadblocks, just start thinking creatively and reaching out to all sorts of organizations that exist right there where you are.
Wonderful. Mark, have you found any organizations we haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, when I joined the U.S. Forest Service about 4 years ago, I got introduced to the Society of American Foresters. And this was an interesting group. It's not a GIS group. It's traditionally made up of foresters. But in the last 10 years or so, they've expanded their user group to include a lot of different people. And so about a year ago, I was asked to present on the impacts of Lidar on forestry. And so I went and I gave a presentation. But during the social hour, I met archaeologists and foresters and hydrologists and soil scientists. And I realized we were kind of all passionate about the forests. And so it was exciting to bring my GIS skills and my expertise to that conversation. And so I guess I would just encourage people, don't just think of looking for GIS groups, look for groups that are on a topic where your GIS skills can be applied. And I found it to be a great organization, and I really enjoy that. So I would just encourage people, maybe look for your particular field or passion and then apply your GIS skills toward that.
That's a great call. Jean, do you have anything to add to volunteering with community groups or any groups of those sorts?
Sure, and thanks. I'm I agree with starting small, but what I what I found over time is look for groups that you're really interested in, and look for mentoring and network opportunities. I think networking, the more I've gotten involved professionally and over time, networking has probably been the grease for the wheel. All the things that we talked about, leadership, trusting others and working well with others and communicating, that's important. But that networking gives you an opportunity to mentor and be mentored. And one thing I've discovered over the years, and especially working with this group, I may be the oldest one here and have worked for a long time, but I've learned as much from them as they have from me. And mentoring goes up and down, down and up, sideways. If you really get involved and you guys are really interested in this, or the group is really interested in the same type of thing, it just turns into a great opportunity to leverage each other's experience and expertise, and I just think everybody benefits from that.
Perfect. I would like to pass this to Chris, but I know before I started getting into the field, I used to think networking was an unpleasant term. I imagined people, you know, just slimy and making deal. I don't know. And I'm actually, believe it or not, fairly introverted. I like people a lot. I love the people I work with, but at the end of the day, I want to go back to my house and read a book or go on a hike. So the idea of you go to a conference and you have to network, you have to walk up to strangers and shake their hand and try and sell yourself. I just want to let people know that networking is not that. It's attending functions, whether it's a day of a conference or a new meet and greet, and just meeting other people. And if you have anything in common with them, talking about what you have in common. In our case, maybe it's always GIS, maybe it's Lidar, maybe it's great places you like to hike. So I just want to make sure people listening to this understand that networking is actually just meeting new people and probably naturally becoming friends with those people you have things in common with. It's just it's an enjoyable activity. And Chris, I'd like to, for students, we've mentioned a lot of the ways outside of their schools to get involved, but how about within U of A? What are some options students might have?
I think regardless if it's at the University of Arizona, Arizona State, NAU, community colleges, anywhere, literally, as a student seeking a degree and trying to think about how you're going to change your lives and move between higher education and a career in the geospatial industry, it's the same things that everyone here has been talking about, that community participation and developing networks, what we generally call soft skills or business focused skills are things you're not going to learn sitting in a classroom. And the way that you're going to learn them is to go out and meet and talk to people like we have on this podcast today. And I like to say, to follow up with Shea's networking comment, making networks and doing the work that's required to build your network, it's not about going out and selling yourself. Like, people are going to get tuned off by you talking about you. That I always have a saying that if you're selling too much, start buying. That meaning that you should know something about the person that you're talking to, that you should be focused on them and then showing mutual interest related to them. And it takes a little bit more work. And it has to be genuine too. Like, find something that you like that's of interest. And it's the networks that really pay off in the long run. And it's not in the ways that you would think of. That it's in ways that it's mutual support about ideas, about you get stuck on a project and they can help you out. So things like that. Like, I still strongly believe in people saying, what's the best book on leadership and to move forward. And I'm still a Dale Carnegie fan of How to Win Friends and Influence People. His stories are from the turn of the century practically, but they're still relevant to today. And Shea and I, I'll bounce this one to you, Shea, as well, but the ways to get out there and do it is, as a student, get involved with the communities that we've been talking about, that get on the listservs in your state, in your city, in your university. Talk to the GIS faculty and see what they're doing, but do your research in advance. Don't just cold call people because they'll just not be interested. And don't just focus on one university. Like, if you're really interested, go talk to Shea Lemar at or Stephanie Dietrich at the MASGS. Talk to me at the U of A. We're professionals, and I will send you on to the next best person or the best person related to your interests. That we don't mind sharing students, because it's all about you and getting forward. For me, people like Karen Blevins at Mesa Community College, or Abir Hamdan at Phoenix College, or Carolyn Patrick, FEMA Community College, that you go to those people that are just great people and are excited about GIS, and start building your networks there. Get out, do an internship. Go see Shea's career days at ASU. Love it, Shea. Come down and do our March Madness. It doesn't matter if you're our students, just get out and do the events. They're fun. What do you think, Shea? What are some of the ways you see students being able to kind of move into the GIS careers and being successful early on?
I think you really just covered all between the opportunities that the professionals outside of academia mentioned, and then you listing just tons of ways within academia to get involved. And that's the key. I'll tell my students, I don't care if you're getting a paid or unpaid internship. I mean, yes, I want you to pay your mortgage, but other than that, or your monthly rent, I guess they're in a slightly different phase of life than I am. But other than that, I want you getting experience using GIS in a different way. And most importantly, I'm wanting you to meet different people. So let's say you go to your local conservation area and you do what Steve said. You say, I've always hiked here. I really like it. I would like to, for a volunteer project, create a base map of your area and some maps for you. And then the next time you try and get a job, you have someone who says, this is a passionate person who's hardworking. And by the way, I happened to meet Mark Christiano a year ago at an event, and he's got a job opening, and I can vouch for you. So again, it's friendly, it's just natural progression, and it's how you learn about different people and different jobs. And I know many of us do GIS because it's a passion, but we also need to pay our bills. So it's good to make these connections. I also think Chris brought up a fantastic point that might not be as obvious. People in Arizona in GIS, we like each other. We're a big family. So as Chris said, our students go down to the U of A events. Their students come up to the ASU events. We introduce each other. All we care about is making the world a better place, and usually using GIS to do that. So again, it used to be my idea of hell to have to go to a conference where I didn't know anyone, because my husband walks up, hi, I'm Phil. He loves talking to people. That is very scary for me, and the idea of doing it for 6 hours, not pleasant. But I've been doing it for a while now, and now I'm just talking with friends and having a good time and meeting new people, which isn't as scary because I'm surrounded by other people that I know. And which reminds me, I just want to cover really quickly mentorship. I, for the first time last year, went to the National States Geographic Information Council meeting back in March, where I knew the people who went with me. I knew Jenna, Steve, Jim, and Jean. Because Jenna, Jean, Steve and Jim, new people, they literally took me, I'm an adult, but they took me around and introduced me to everybody because they know it's not my favorite thing to do. And I met some of the most wonderful people. So I'd like to I know we need to wrap up, but Jean, especially I'd like to start with you. Much like networking, I used to hear mentorship and I thought, I don't have a mentorship program. I don't have time to be a mentor. I don't have, there's no program in place. How do I join the program? Mentorship is not, I've learned, it's not a formalized thing most of the time I see it. Can you just speak to how it doesn't have to be a formalized process and how easy and natural it can be both as the mentor and the mentee, Jean?
I'll try. Thank you. I think the group of us that are on this podcast right now, and including Chris, we've known each other for a long time. We like each other. We work on different things. I think mentoring, to me, and I think Mark has gone through things at federal government that are much more formalized, but I never had classes in mentoring, and I found that mentoring was going on before I really understood that that's what it was. And it's kind of like what you're saying, Shea. It's interpersonal relationships and communicating and working with people and developing trust, and as a group feeling comfortable enough with each other that when you make mistakes, you learn from that and try not to repeat them, and then leverage each other's thoughts and experiences. Again, one thing I learned in a not professional setting, in another personal setting, was I joined a men's group, and I learned a lot about mentoring there, about how different people help each other or can help each other. And it's not just like somebody on high helping somebody down low. It really is, in a networking kind of sense, all very integrated and people working together and helping each other.
Chris, that's great. I'll pass it back to you.
Well, we've had a wonderful conversation about GIS and leadership, and I'd like to leave you with a closing image of how to be a successful GIS leadership person that can take on the world and change it for the better and take down the dark side of keep the forest going. And you can see that as you progress towards the top of the leadership change, you can even take on Darth Vader. But I greatly appreciate everybody being here today and sharing your thoughts and ideas about this, and want to say that this conversation will continue at the AGIC conference this fall with Steve Whitney. And maybe Steve, you could tell us, give us a few words about the event that you're having planned for AGIC on this topic.
So we have several events, presentations planned towards leadership. The presentation I'm working on specifically is to survey GIS leaders in Arizona, much like this group here, and get at a lot of what we talked about as well. And I've been taking some notes from this conversation, so that will help too. We also have some other people coming in to speak and do leadership type presentations as well. So I encourage everybody, the conference is virtual this year, so and it's free. So I encourage everybody to register and participate, and look for that leadership track. As I said, we've got several presentations lined up, and hopefully we'll have some good virtual networking opportunities as well. And that would probably be a good idea. Is maybe that would be one of our focus topics for one of the networking sessions is talking about leadership with all of us, and taking questions from people that are looking to become leaders, or how to progress in their leadership, and what opportunities there are. So yeah, thanks for let me put a plug in for the AGIC conference.
Oh, thank you, Steve. And I thought maybe I just ask everybody just on our exit to just, if you have any final comments about GIS and leadership, and, you know, maybe if you're young and trying to start your path towards a career in GIS, and be like, hey, you know, I really admire these people. I'd like to get there someday and maybe be, you know, a leader of my organization or my at work, but just don't know where to start. You know, like, what would be some advice that you might give to those people? And Shea, I thought I'd start with you because I know that there's some other, we both have had long-term careers in academia, and you've seen amazing students come through ASU as well too. Any thoughts from the higher ed side of things first?
The ones I have to go with just getting involved in a group, meet some new people. So I know on our campus, we have a youth mappers. It's a volunteer opportunity to do mapping for humanitarian aid. There are, and I highly recommend or get a job, an internship, whether it's paid or unpaid, or go to any one of these user groups that we've mentioned, because it's a way to start meeting people. And again, AGIC has so many volunteers, and they've got different committees with, are you interested in Lidar or drones or helping run the conference that we do once a year? It's a wide variety. So it's a nice, again, from the introvert, a nice quiet way to get to meet other people. And I highly recommend that. So Jenna, I'm going to pass it to you, especially since you're the person who has brought so many people into AGIC and really grown the volunteer portion of it.
Thanks. I think my thought as far as parting words and getting started in any organization, in any, not just GIS, but, you know, trying to further our careers, I think I would say it's okay to be scared, but do it anyway. You always find opportunity where you least expect it. And that person that you meet, you don't know how they're going to help you. You don't know how you may help them. We don't know how we impact others in our lives. So be intentional about it and be willing to risk. Do it anyway. We're not scary people. We're all just people. So yeah.
Steve, how about you? Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, the thought that comes to mind is, I don't know if I've run across anybody involved in GIS that is not open to sharing and helping others. I mean, that's probably one of the greatest things about this community and this family, is we're always willing to help each other out. So don't be afraid to reach out and make contact. You know, if the person you're contacting doesn't have all the answers, they're typically going to be more than willing to direct you to others that do, and that helps build your network as well.
Great. Mark, how about any closing thoughts from you?
I've been sitting here trying to remember how I first networked, and I was listening to you, Shea, talk about your nervousness. And my first group was called NEARC, Northeast Arc Users Association. And I was a grad student, and I got to go to the conference because I got volunteered to run the IT portion of it. You know, make sure the projector was set up and working, make sure the laptop was up and working. And so that's my advice to students listening to this. If you volunteer in that way, one, you get to go to the conference for free, which is awesome. Two, they usually feed you, which is like critical when you're a grad student, you know, free food. And it had this weird like side effect of you instantaneously met every single speaker at the conference, which are usually like the big wigs, right? And they're terrible with their laptops too. So you're sitting there helping them with their presentations, and you get to chit chat with them like instantaneously. It's like built-in networking because you have something to talk about, like how they brought their presentation on a Mac and you only have PCs, and where's the jump drive? And what do you mean you brought a slide projector? You know, these kinds of conversations. And so I found that from that point on, for the next 10 years, I volunteered as like, you know, audio visual assistants for every conference I went to. And eventually there I was standing there with Director John Jarvis, the head of the National Park Service, chit-chatting in a private 5-minute session, helping him get his mic set up. And like, there is no way that there's ever a scenario when I would end up standing there with the director of the National Park Service, someone who's 2 steps away from the president, you know, and there we are chit-chatting, and he's like, oh, hey, tell me about the park you work at and all this kind of stuff. That's back when I worked for the National Park Service. So my closing sort of concrete thing is get involved, volunteer to help, because it instantly puts you like in the inner circle of everyone you're probably trying to get to talk to anyways. And usually it involves, you know, food or beer, or like those conferences, you are the guy who saved people's presentations. You know, I still have my pint glass from the first AGIC conference I went to, because like a professor walked up and was like, thank you, here. You know, so I highly recommend, if you're nervous about networking, be useful at the conference and people will come to you, kind of thing. So
Great idea. Jean, how about you? Do you have any closing thoughts on these topics?
I think what everybody said so far is really good, and I agree with all of them. If I, you know, from my own perspective, I really look for opportunities, and that could be to go to conferences and help out at conferences. The first ESRI conference I ever went to was 35 people. And I knew little or nothing about GIS other than I had just gotten hired into it. And what I met was a community of people that really, really cared about stuff and were very friendly. And it helped me get over a lot of my concerns and inhibitions. But I think conferences are a great way to go. AGIC, I'm sorry that in some ways it's a virtual conference this year, because NISGIC and AGIC, I've never worked with a bunch of more workaholic, hardworking people from sunrise to sunset. And then when the sun sets, the socials that they have, you've got all these experiences in technical and in presentations, etc. The social networking that happens at the socials at the end of the day cement relationships. And I can't tell you how many relationships I've had where if you're willing to help other people and put yourself out there, they're willing to help you. And it really, you know, it might be a social and you're drinking beer together with somebody else, but by golly, you can get on the phone with people around the state or around the nation and say, I've got a problem and can you help me with that? And this is a community where 9 times out of 10, you'll get that help, or they'll point you at somebody who can help you. So I would look for those opportunities to get involved and help others, and never be afraid to help others, because it's kind of like karma, it comes back.
Chris, all of us would like to thank you for this opportunity. You make exciting new creative opportunities for students and for professionals. So thank you, Dr. Lukenbiel, for putting all of this together and all of the opportunities that you put together for students and professionals.
Oh, thank you, Shea. I was thinking of Jean's comment on karma, that we make our own karma. And I was thinking as well that I say something to the students throughout my career that perhaps the most important part of your education occurs outside the classroom. And I think the same applies to working in the GIS profession. Perhaps the most important things that'll happen to you will not be at your desk where you're working, but it'll be those little side conversations. The person that you met and were friendly to, and you had a great time with, and it just reappears somewhere later, that that connection is meaningful at some point in some time. So building the networks is going to come back around because of the karma that you've laid in a way. I think it's a great conversation for us to have and to continue having at AGIC, at your local GIS community group, on campuses, and off. So get out there and enjoy the geospatial community in Arizona. We do, and we hope to see you around, and come back again soon and watch us on the podcast. We'll try to get more events where we incorporate the cross-territorial divide and have Shea and others at ASU join us as well. But thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, Chris, that was great.
Yep. Thank you all.